Hey, good evening, everybody. One of the most powerful things that Jesus ever said in the Word was that there were greater works that ye shall do. And him saying that in the Bible, he was speaking to his disciples, and he was saying something so powerful about that, that the disciples would be going about and doing the things that Jesus was performing, that they were struggling to do themselves, that they were struggling to put into power. But as Jesus goes to go be with the Father, he left them with that, letting them know that they would be able to do greater works than even he did. So the mantle that he was passing on was going to be for them to do greater things. And that's what I'm here to talk about today. We're in part 4 of volume 4 on heroes, villains, and civilians. This is going to be us in closing, and we're talking about passing the mantle. And that's what Jesus was saying in that moment was, you know, hey, I'm passing this mantle on to you, that the things that I was doing, I'm not going to be here to continue them, but you are going to continue to do them in my name. And that's one of the things that, as I matured more, as I grew from wanting to try to be the hero in my own way, that I received what it was that Jesus was looking to give me, giving me the gift of healing, giving me the gift of even being able to dream dreams. He's given me a gift in those areas, and me being able to speak to people, to connect with people, and to understand people so that we can be able to go to another level in our communication. And that's just something that the Lord has passed on to me. That is a powerful mantle to have passed on. But that's the focus of today's video, passing the mantle. And you see a lot of that in the comic book realm, where they're looking to find someone a hero is looking to find someone to take their place. A villain is looking to find someone to continue their corruption when they're not able to. And both parties do it in their own way. Heroes do it in the sense of becoming like that hero in essence. So they're passing the mantle on to that person to become their replacement. From a villain perspective, it's more so, I'm going to corrupt this person so that when I am gone, they will continue a form of corruption regardless of how they do it. They don't always have the expectation of you do it exactly my way, the way I've taught you. They just look for there to be some form of destruction or chaos to follow in the midst of them leaving that in their hands and them being successful at it. And that's about as far as it goes from a villain perspective. But a lot of times you really primarily see it from the hero realm. One example of that would be with Batman and what they call the Bat Family. You have Batman himself. You have Robin. You have the several different forms of Robin. Robin Dick Grayson. You have Robin Jason Todd. You have I forget his first name, but his last name is Drake. You have that version of him. You have Batgirl. You have Batwoman. Those are two different ones. A lot of people know about the new show for Batwoman. That is a separate person from the original. Batgirl being what's known as now the Oracle. And then there's Batwoman. So there's several different people that have followed behind Batman, learned from Batman to become heroes in resemblance to Batman. And even more so, they're a precaution. In one sense, it's been observed that they're a precaution to make sure that when he passes, heroism continues. And even more so, they even theorize that these people are being trained in case Batman ever crosses the line or chooses to go to the dark side, that he has a team in place to take him down. So there is a league of people there to replace him. Even Superman has a line of people. There's Superboy. There's other clone versions of Superman. There is Steel. There's the Eradicator. There's several different forms of Superman. There's several different forms of the Flash. I'd even say there's probably a Wonder Woman family, save just Wonder Woman herself, Artemis. There's Wonder Girl. There's several of those as well. Those that are looking to pass their mantle on to someone who they could entrust to replace them if they pass. They do similar to that in Marvel as well. Marvel primarily kind of does that. One of the most successful would be Spider-Man using Miles Morales as his replacement. That's more so from the Spider-Verse perspective, but that is an also important aspect for them. In Marvel attempting to do that type of replacement, they've had a hit or miss history with trying to do that. For instance, Miles Morales has so far been a success, especially with them doing Into the Spider-Verse, that gives off that mantle passing imagery. So you can see that they've entrusted with Miles Morales to carry on the story of Spider-Man. So when they go to put out his comic books, people are like, we will read this and we will enjoy this, even though it's not Peter Parker. One of the unsuccessful ones that was done, I think her name was Riri. She was attempting to replace Iron Man. It was going to be the young black lady. She was going to be replacing Iron Man. Her intelligence is up there. The way that they did that storyline was when Civil War II happened and Iron Man had to download his conscience into his computer system. She was the one that was going to take over Stark Industries and lead things and make sure everything was functioning properly. But she wasn't as big of a hit in the sales as Miles Morales was. And again, like I said, they continue to try and find replacements for those other heroes. Even as we know, Bucky from the Marvel Cinematic Universe was one. He did some time for replacing Captain America in the comics. He did that for a short period of time. Even Sam Wilson, the Falcon, who is going to be the new Captain America for the MCU, as far as the comic books go, he had his time where he was a Captain America figurehead. But regardless of how much they've tried to find replacements for these heroes, the heroes still have the main version of themselves that are prevalent to the storylines, are present for the heroic works, are present for the giving wisdom. They still show themselves to be a part of the story, no matter who they've passed the mantle on to. To be totally honest, I think that's one of the things that's really hurt the Miss Marvel storyline, was because they tried to pass that from Captain Marvel, the original, I'm not trying to get all nerdy on myself there, but the original Captain Marvel, he is my favorite. Captain Marvel, he's my favorite, one of my favorite heroes. He's one of those heroes that has such a heroic, great story. Not to delve too much into it, but Miss Marvel, the current Captain Marvel, the female version, Carol Danvers, is that mantle being passed on to her to carry that on, at least from I guess you could say, trying to be original. From the comic book perspective, she was supposed to carry that on, but she never really popped off. Even after they redid her story, she still hasn't popped off as much as she could have. There's a lot of women that truly support the role, but she's not that big in the picture. And just to be totally honest, I don't really think that it's the best version of her. I think her older version was a lot better than the new version. I think they could have done a lot more there than what they're trying to do now. That's just my perspective on that. And like I said, villains try and do it in the sense of they just want to destroy somebody mentally, destroy somebody's character, cause them to be built up to be destructive, to be able to have the same impact in the sense of heroes do by having someone to pass the mantle on to. The little version I'd use, I would say Joker doing that with Harley Quinn. Yes, Harley Quinn originally was just like a sidekick character to that, but whenever you had Harley Quinn going about and doing her own thing, you knew you couldn't reference Harley Quinn's chaotic character without thinking about the Joker's chaotic character and how she's kind of carrying that on in and of herself. You see that a lot happening there. You see that happening, I'm trying to think of other people that try to carry that on. Now, Thanos, I think he tried to do that with his own children. One of the primary ones, Gamora, we know that he tried to make her a bit chaotic, but she kind of steered in the area of heroism. Nebula, who's claimed to be his daughter, but she never actually was, but she was a villainous character in her original storyline, but then she even ended up being attacked by Thanos of her own volition. Thanos even had a son, and his son went and took up the Phoenix Force, robbed Thanos of his own powers to go and try and be that, big villainous threat, and he got robbed of that also. He ended up actually getting killed by Thanos too. So it's interesting that when you see someone trying to take up that role of villainy, that there's a lot of destruction and chaos that falls into those storylines. So it's very crazy. Not to stick with the Batman family and to continue the video, but there was even an instance where, of course, I think it was Jason Todd, I think it was. No, it wasn't Jason Todd. It was the Drake. Tim Drake. Tim Drake is his name. Tim Drake was one of the Robins, and when Tim Drake was assaulted by the Joker, he was beaten to near death. And when Batman went to go save him, an explosion happened at that same building. Joker beat him with a crowbar and then blew up the building he was in, and Tim Drake died. Tim Drake ended up, unbeknownst to Batman for a time, dipped into the Lazarus Pit, which can restore your damage and, in a sense, give you eternal life, depending on how often you use the Lazarus Pits. But he was resurrected. He came back as the Red Hood, and that's where he became what we call an anti-hero. So his character really was kind of impacted from the two forms of mantle passing. Batman tried to mold him in the right way of heroism, while due to the sufferings that he went through because of the Joker, that kind of broke his thought process and understanding around being that kind of hero. So that's where he went to be an anti-hero, a type of hero that would kill other villains to make sure that those villains weren't continuing to do what they do. And that's where you get the Red Hood. But to kind of shift I want to shift into the realm of manga because I believe that manga really does it a lot, and manga does it in a way where it really just kind of keeps you sucked into the story. Three of the top ones where you kind of see a mantle being passed on to the next generation. You got One Piece that does it. You have My Hero Academia that does it. Naruto even does it. And there's several others that I've collected, several others that I've read where that mantle is being passed on to the next generation and they're being trusted with that. So if you were to look at it from the standpoint of One Piece is kind of minimal in it, but you know that's where they did it. Is where Luffy is taking on to become the Pirate King. Gol D. Roger was the original, he was the captain of all captains, the king of the pirates, top of the line, had all the treasure, had everything, then saw the world, great travels, and after he had passed on, he had let it out to the world that his treasure is theirs for the taking, but you'll have to find it first, but he left all of his treasures in one piece. And that's what started the whole story, is finding that one piece. And every time you're watching and reading about that story, you see that Luffy is reflecting more and more of Gol D. Roger in the way he carries himself. You see that from Luffy meeting some people that have worked with Gol D. Roger. The very first one that you'll recognize is Shanks. You see that later on with Raleigh Silvers, who Luffy meets with and trains for the 2-year time skip that took place. Luffy trained with someone that was at near on the level of Gol D. Roger as far as combat strength, so he trained with him. So there's a lot of that mantle passing taking place there, and the most significant imagery of that mantle being passed was when Shanks put the straw hat on the head of Luffy before Luffy truly began training and began his journey as going towards becoming the Pirate King. You really see it also in Naruto, being that Naruto was a parentless child, fatherless as well as motherless, and he was trying to just find his own way, find his own purpose and goal, and he focused on becoming Hokage, which is a very dynamic role to work towards that being his goal. Come to finding out that that was the role that his father filled before he died. That was the role of Minato. He was the 4th Hokage of that time. And then you see that there's a lot of other people that motivated Naruto to continue to push towards becoming that Hokage. But even more so, there's a spiritual aspect of that where the Sage of Six Paths, his children were the spirit the spirit of his children were found in Naruto. So in essence, he reflected in Naruto, his son reflected in Naruto, so that mantle was passed on a spiritual level, as you would see there. Same thing with Sasuke, although Sasuke went the dark route to do that. That was the spirit of the Sage of Six Paths' other son, was that spirit being passed on through Sasuke and that being carried on. So they were really, in essence, passing the mantle on in a very storyline written deep. You got to pay attention watching and seeing everything that's happening to see it all tied together. That's how they did it in that storyline. One of the biggest and top hitting right now for a passing of the mantle truly would be in the story of My Hero Academia right now. You literally, and that's why this ties into the heroes, villains, and civilian storyline. Midoriya was someone who wanted to be a hero, but Midoriya was born without the ability, without any of the powers that the other heroes have. He was born without what they call a quirk for their storyline. Their powers are called quirks. He was born without one, so he didn't have anything that would allow him to become a hero. But what he did have in him was the heart of a hero. So he had the heart and the character to where he could be entrusted to actually become a hero regardless of not having any powers. And so that's where one, you see at first, he's left with the decision of only being a civilian. I'm left only watching. I'm left only having to be saved. He went through that instance where All Might had to save him. He went through that instance where Kacchan, otherwise known as Bakugo, was being attacked and being possessed by this slimy type creature, and he was trying to use Bakugo's quirks to his own advantage as well. And Midoriya, otherwise known as Deku, sitting there watching in that moment, seeing his friend being taken over and thinking that this is all that I can do because I don't have any powers. I'm not capable of anything. But the thing that set him apart was Deku, in that very same moment when Kacchan was being captured, decided that I had to do something. He ran out there to go help his friend in the midst of other civilians that were watching. He ran out there to go save him. And it wasn't because it was his friend that he went to do it. It was because someone was in need that he went to go do it. And as he was trying to save him with no powers, with no idea of what else he could do against a slime type person, he looks at his friend and he smiles and tells him that everything's going to be all right. He goes to save his friend. And that for the hero of heroes, All Might, that's what built it, stored in him that he knew that he could entrust heroism to Midoriya, who later becomes known as the hero Deku. And he takes on what's known as the One for All, and he gets that power where he has a vast array of powers to choose from, to learn how to use and harness for his own self. And he takes on that mantle. You watch him learn from All Might, amongst other heroes, even from his friends, on how he can become that better hero. So that mantle is being passed on to Deku. And that story does such a great job of writing that. I'm not even kidding, guys. If you want to watch any manga, if you want to read any manga, you want to watch any anime, watch My Hero Academia. They do such a great job. And please, I said it in my last video, pay attention to the fillers. The fillers are amazing. But I don't want to get stuck there because I could talk for hours. And I got to go spend some time with my family too. So we're going to wrap this thing up here. We're going to get to the bulk of it, the most important part of this. And that's talking about the Bible's aspect of passing on that mantle. Where you really see that, you see that in the beginning, you see the mantle being passed, like instantly. Instantly. And why I say instantly is because where God went to create the world, we talked about this in my creations video, where he created all things for the earth. What he did was he made human beings in his own image. If there isn't a mantle being passed and just making you in my image, it's right there. Your character, your being, who you are, is a reflection of God. So with that being said, you're going to go and be like God, but be like God in the earth. So that was originally ordained from the get-go. But of course, we ate from the tree. All of that began to fall apart. So we're not doing it in the same fashion originally, but we're having to kind of twist the story a bit as time goes on, how we're going to be in the image of God now today. And even more so, that continued. You see that happen with the story of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And the reason I say that is because there was a promise and a covenant established with Abraham to where his people would become, he would become the father of many nations. But you don't necessarily directly see that happen through him, but you do see him have a child, and his child has 2 more children, and then his second son ends up having 12 children, and those 12 children have several children. Even Egypt becomes overwhelmed. You see that later on throughout the end of Genesis up into the beginning of Exodus, that the children of Israel began to grow and grow and grow. So that's an extremely powerful mantle passing. The reason I acknowledge this as a passing of the mantle as well is because one of the things that was expected of them as father to son relationship is that you introduce your children to who you worship, to what you believe and what you practice, so that your sons are becoming that image of yourself, and they're able to live and sustain themselves based off of that. And I don't mean that in the sense of, be abusive and be aggressive because I need my son to be great kind of thing. What I mean is the father experiences things that he knows are vital and beneficial to life, as well as they see in the darker halves of life. So they have to make sure that they teach their sons about these things, so that when their son steps up to be a man in this world, they'll be that right kind of man. And that's what Abraham had to do, Isaac had to do, Jacob had to do, and Jacob had to do that for 12 children. But that's something that you have to take in. And sadly, even today, we still do that in the negative connotation. The abusive, aggressive nature of some fathers is reflected into their children. Spiritual things that the fathers take in, that having that pride, what they suffered in their past time is passed on to the children, whether directly or indirectly. So you're still passing a mantle in some form or fashion onto the next generation. So that happened there in the beginning of the Bible. You see it with Moses. Moses was one that got a mantle passed to him from God when God told him, I need you to go deliver my people out of Egypt. He got the mantle in that very moment. Right? So, I mean, and that was something he was scared to do. He's like, I'm not even qualified to do this. But God told him, he's like, look, I need you to do this. I'm going to make you able. I'm going to empower you to be able to do this. And then the mantle got passed from Moses. It got passed on to Joshua. Joshua was someone, and now if you listen and pay attention to what happens with Joshua, you notice that Joshua didn't come up at the tail end of Moses' story. Joshua was there from the beginning to the end. You see Joshua kind of being there, watching Moses, supporting Moses, being obedient to Moses and being obedient to God. And so as Moses passed on, Joshua took on that lead. He was called to take on that leadership, and he did it with such ferocity and energy. That's why they call him a mighty man of valor, because he was courageous. He took on that calling on his life, which is one thing that separates him from Moses. Oh man, I'm going to get crazy and start on this. You have one guy who's nervous and stutters all the time to one guy who's bold and courageous and will say and do what he's called to do. I said it in one other video about Joshua, how Joshua stood up to an angel came down and he talked to the angel. He's like, basically asked him, whose side are you on? Let me know right now and we'll go to battle. Basically, he challenged that angel without fear. He went in ready. And that's something so powerful. Granted, the angel came for God and not to destroy them or distract them. But the angel was sent by the Lord. But to not keep it Old Testament as we draw this video to a close, I did want to bring it back to, I always like to bring this back and bring it back to Jesus. Jesus didn't come and do what he did so that we could be pew sitters. Jesus didn't come and do what he did so that we could simply watch others do it because we think others are more capable than we are. We got to be like Joshua, become courageous. We got to go through like Moses did, and even in the midst of our incapabilities, to trust in God and be obedient to him so that we can fulfill the things that he's called us to do. I get that a lot of you think that's not in my skill set. That's not in my ability range. But even still, God is able to empower you. God gives each and every one of us gifts. Like I told you in the beginning, he gave me the gift of healing. God given me the gift of being able to listen to people and be able to articulate what those people are saying to me with my own understanding, and they know that I was actually listening to them. That's a gift from God. That's not something I get to sit here and boast about. I give glory to God for me being able to do those things. I give glory to God for me to even be able to draw. Even with this new phone, look, I'm going to probably share these pictures, but I'm drawing on my phone. That's something crazy. I've never drawn on my phone, and I'm doing art that I otherwise haven't done in a long time and not with a lot of confidence. But my artistic abilities are gifts from God. And I have to go forward with these gifts and not sit in the back seat, not wait for everyone else to take care of things. But I got to go in boldly to do what God has called me to do. Whether or not I have powers, whether or not I have the strength, whether or not I have the ability to articulate things clearly or speak at a level like other people are able to speak, whether or not I've studied up on everything, because I can tell you right now, I don't know everything about the comics that I even talk about. I don't know every single detail. I haven't read every single book. I'm just a huge fan of it. And from the books that I have read, from the things that I have listened to, I've been inspired to push towards doing something great, one, with my passion, two, with my gifts. I've been pushed to do something great, and that's what I strive to do, and I want to encourage you to do the same thing. You know, strive towards what your calling is. Strive towards what your gifts are. Strive towards what your purpose is, and you'll be able to see yourself do great things. Don't limit yourself based off your own perspective of yourself. Don't limit yourself off of the curses that may show up from your past generations that you're otherwise saying that makes you incapable or that you're just trying to run away from. Don't let those things limit you from being able to be the great that you're called to be. Because from being a civilian, there's a mantle that's being passed on to you. And whether it's the Lord or whether it's the devil, someone's trying to pass something on to you and make you into something that you need to become. Someone's trying to make you into something. Someone's trying to make you into something. But who is that someone that you're going to be? Are you going to become the villain of this story, or are you going to become the hero? And it's up to you who you choose to follow. Thank you. Have a blessed day, everybody. Thank you for watching. This is part 4 of Volume 4, Heroes, Villains, and Civilians. Thank you for listening to Passing the Mantle. I would love to hear, what kind of person do you want to be? I would love to hear from you guys in the comments. What kind of person do you want to be? Thank you.